you pioneered the early spacewalk technology, didn't you, because of your interest in diving? I think you said to me that you'd wanted to do that.
It's a little bit the other way around. We were experiencing difficulties. Some missions had to be stopped, terminated early, and we didn't get to do the spacewalking. Or there was a situation where the person doing the spacewalk was getting overheated, and then he got frustrated in trying to do something. So there was not really a great success. Mike Collins on Gemini 10 had a maneuvering gun. He opened the hatch and moved out and did everything with actually it was a dead Agena. It was left up there from the previous mission. But when he got back in, he had to mess around with the umbilical. So we always had some things going wrong. And I had been training to do this backpack maneuvering unit on the last flight, Gemini 12, because it hadn't been flown on the flight 9 before. I was on the backup crew on that one. So this was the last chance to use this #1 Air Force experiment. And someone had suggested from around Baltimore, they did some research and discovered that if you were neutrally buoyant underwater, that it behaved quite a bit like being in space, where you would be floating. So they had suggested, and being a scuba diver from 9 years previous, I felt, yeah, this I think will really work. Some of the other astronauts said, no, we don't think that's good. But they were wrong and I was right. And it did make things easier, but still, NASA was a little conservative, so they canceled the backpack maneuvering unit. And I was really disappointed because I would have loved to have separated and fly around the spacecraft. NASA insisted on a 100-foot tether. You know, all that would do is get in your way. But those of you who've seen the movie Gravity, George Clooney was flying around with a backpack. That's what I was going to do. but it was canceled.
On that flight, on Gemini 12?
Yes. So I just did some very simple tasks.
And I remember, I read that you talked about the conservative nature of NASA. So you became an astronaut in '63, and then on the back of that PhD from MIT, and then 3 years later, you're in space. So the pace of it seems to be anything but conservative in that sense.
Well, yes. When the training for Gemini was going on, some of the early missions, and I helped to train some of the people along with the company, McDonnell Douglas, for the first rendezvous. And I had asked the top guy, I said, you know, I'd like to fly on one of these rendezvous flights. He didn't say anything. But then as the assignments came out, I was going to back up a flight and then switch to prime crew, but there wasn't any mission. So I wasn't going to fly on Gemini. But then a tragedy took the life of my backdoor neighbor, and then we moved to replace him on Gemini 9, and they had a crew for 10 and 11, so then Jim Lovell and I flew on Gemini 12, and that was a success. So then I was in good position to be selected to fly an Apollo mission.
Yeah.
So Neil and I were assigned to what eventually became Apollo 8, the first flight to orbit the moon. And that was really a wonderful flight to be on the backup group and to see all the training. And Neil and I worked pretty close together on that. And then the normal rotation would be, after Apollo 8, there was a crew to Apollo 9 and 10, so we would fly on Apollo 11. And if everything worked out, we might be able to make the first attempted landing. And it all worked out pretty good. And it all worked out pretty good. And it all worked out pretty good.